Shay and I work together. So I've seen firsthand his commitment to the industry and to medical cannabis patients. And it was a pleasure to work with you. And he's just the salt of the earth. So I call him an earth angel. He does so much for the community and for the people in his life. And I think like oftentimes if there's issues with extraction or things that I, come on my mind, I'll reach out to Shay. And that's how we came to be on this interview today. Someone gave me a cartridge, a vape cartridge. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I did not like it at all. It didn't taste good. It was like, I think it gave me a headache. And I also am involved with compliance. I produce products in the cannabis industry and the CBD industry. I am a packaging compliance expert, and that's one of the services that I offer. So I look at packaging, I look at the design, I look at the compliance, and I looked at it and I said, 85%, how is this even possible? Why is there no CBD? I was just completely confused by it because I typically buy quality product. And as an industry player, I support quality businesses who make quality product. So this was not something I knew about before, this brand, which I'm not going to say. And Shay and I got talking, and I was like, Shay, there's no CBD in here. What do you think about this? How is that possible? And he said, well, they're doing what they do with CBD for the hemp market. They breeding out the genetic and extracting just the THC. I said, yeah, I get it. But why? This doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? This goes against all of my principles of full spectrum. So here we are. And I'd love to get your feedback on this and talk a little bit about what does it mean to be a conscious business? In my mind, it means it's not about just the money. Money is one aspect of business. We all want to provide for ourselves, but it can't just be about the money, or you're just not living life to its fullest. And with cannabis, it's the sacred plant. It's not sacred because it gets you high. That's a joke. It's sacred because it brings healing and it uncovers us conscious and it helps us to think freely for ourselves in so many ways. So, it's something I think that's, for me, the conscious business practices are about awareness. I'm operating in awareness. I'm aware of my impact. I'm aware of how I want to be experiencing life and how the products I want to, put out. It's about awareness. But would you share with me your just personal insights on what you think about what that means to operate with conscious business practices?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think especially in LA, it's a very tough question to nail down, because I feel that in the beginning, I wouldn't say all providers or all manufacturers or all distributions all came into the same idea that we want to do it right and we want to do it legal. I think that because the way cannabis has grown in California, it started out as recreational only, which only increased the black market to provide for all those people who didn't want to go get those licenses. And then there was that shift that was something that was already well established, and then they added more stricter rules. The problem with the strict rules is there's not a lot of people to regulate them quite yet. So people can continue to keep putting out these bad products. Now, when it comes to making the products, there are some people just trying to turn quick profit. I understand that. And unfortunately, that's in any industry that you get into. You can see it at the liquor store. You can see it at grocery stores. People just cranking out whatever they can.
Well, it is the nature of a corporation too. I have a B Corp, but if you have a standard corporation, it does state that you have to account for revenue to your shareholders. So essentially the primary objective is revenue. I get that, which is why I chose to go with a benefit corp. But I think there's a really good point you're making that it's all industries.
Right.
And one of the reasons I created this show is because it's completely relevant to cannabis, because we have so many philanthropists and altruistic individuals within this industry that it made sense. And there's actually potentially an audience for this to propel it forward,
Yeah.
But absolutely, it's a very good point. It's in all industries. Continue.
The problem also with that is the state pretty much kind of came after the cannabis industry with full throttle. So Colorado did it right, and the state was willing to work with them. And it's just now getting to a level where it's stabilizing. The pendulum has swung both ways, and now it's getting to a point where it's successful. Washington is also getting to that point. Oregon is slowly getting there, but they're still trying to fine tune it. California, on the other hand, the state was like, okay, well, we saw the success, we saw the profit, we want to see that tomorrow. And unfortunately, it took some time for these businesses to develop. So even if you had good practices, or you were like, I'm going to go in it and I'm going to do it right, the pressure for all the laws, the rules, and the restrictions that you have made it very, very difficult, not only to create ethical process, but also that just makes sense, because the longer things take, the harder it is to sell. And usually the longer the things take is also because of all the legal like red tape that it has to go through. So I would have to say that there's a lot of factors of the reasoning why the ethics has kind of gone away from cannabis in the sense. I don't think it'll stay permanently. I feel that like with this, unfortunately, this big issue of COVID right now, it's put a lot of pressure on those people that were just hustling and trying to get this product out. And the people that like did it the right way, crossed every T, dotted every I, followed the rules and regulations from the CDPH, followed the rules and regulations from the BCC, took their time with it, were able to successfully continue to keep growing. Cannabis has been up, it's 57% since January. The problem with it, though, is that now a lot of the back inventory that a lot of suppliers had is starting to, be depleted. And the CDPH had asked most manufacturers to put on pause for at least 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm,
And it's kind of like a diesel engine. You can't just shut it off. You need to like let it warm down and then let it warm back up. So there's
plus all the packaging too. The whole supply chain's been affected. I'm waiting on packaging. Like some of my products, they said it would be August.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem getting these packaging before.
And that's just in the packaging. That's not actually in the material. And
Agreed.
The material itself will take a lot longer to grow. Good material will take a lot longer to grow. So really the higher quality products will probably become very scarce again, which only gives more money and time for the black market to continue to grow. And again, the BCC is up against it's up against the wall. They don't have anybody to come and regulate right now because there's no real funding for it. So it's like the people who are doing it right, if they have enough funding behind them, they can continue to do it right. But the people who tried to do it right ended up having to cut corner here, cut corner there, cut corner there until it's just a big circle. And then they're the ones that are actually struggling right now in itself because ethics falls under not only what product you're putting out, who your people are, but also how you pay the people. Like, I'd have to say one of the big things about.
Oh, wait, hold on. Before you go, you're going into a whole other thing here with people and the labor. Before you go on to that, which is extremely valuable, I just want to chime in about the regulations. I think, being a policy advocate is so important for us because when it's working, we have to be able to come forward and say it's not working. And the bottom line is the regulations are not working. Like, honestly, I've seen a number of businesses that cannot operate sufficiently and also comply. It's not. Right. We've had 2 distribution companies go down in the last 6 months that were quite large, well funded, and well operated. Yeah. So like it's just unfortunately it's not working. And in terms of the enforcement, absolutely agree with you. That cart that I mentioned when I started inspecting the packaging, and because I was like, what is this thing? It was so foreign, the whole concept. But when I started to drill into their website because I wanted to see who they were, what they're doing, and the links were broken. The QR code on the packaging did not work. I just on so many levels, I wasn't even sure if it was legal. I'm like, where did you get this? Is this a legal product? But then I went and looked at the executive board, which we can talk about later. The executive board is all finance, big time, big funds. It's very interesting to see who's behind this, and it's definitely money focused. Like, money is the number one. Now, in terms of enforcement, they're not being enforced with that packaging. No one's saying, hey, your links are broken. Is that your address to your facility? But in Oregon, just last year, my introductory episode for this show, I talked about how there's a company that's been the number one selling product in the West Coast, and they just got hit with a fine. They were going to be purchased. It was part of an acquisition. The state of Oregon the organization that regulates, they said, listen, we're not going to hold up the deal because we want this purchase to happen. Right. But we are going to fine you. And they were fining them because they had MCT oil in their vape carts, which very clearly say on the packaging 100% cannabis. And when I hear 100% cannabis, it does not mean there's MCT oil in my vape cart.
Cut with something else.
Yeah, so that was in Oregon, and I just, and you can go back and look at my first episode if you want to know who it is. I'm not going to say it again, but the enforcement is really important, you know, and being able to be, you know, being a policy advocate and coming forth. So thank you for touching on that. Yes, please continue. You were talking about labor and how labor, how we engage with labor. It's so expensive, especially in California. There's a lot of labor considerations that you don't have in other locations. So it's like one of the main points for businesses. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, the hard part is too, especially, is that there is no standard set. So you don't know that an extractor actually deals with butane, and it's a very dangerous situation, which you should be properly trained in, and you should be OSHA compliant and all this other things. And what they do is they just find someone for like $15 an hour part-time, and they crank them on in there, and they have them work the night shift, which is ending up, you know, not only that's like where you're getting the poor product. And I'm not saying
no, I've seen this too. I've seen it firsthand. Absolutely. And a lot of times they will buy very expensive machinery, and it has a console that kind of tells you everything and watches a lot of things. So I can see how some people would say, I don't need an expert technician on this. The machine can do it. But the reality is that you really should have someone on your team that's an expert.
You should have at least a chemist. You should have at least an engineer. You should have at least, you know, the proper equipment, the proper ventilation. That's the other thing too. I went to a conference in Las Vegas a little while back before COVID-19, and one of the big things that they were pushing is compliance, like systems. And what they were talking about in particular is there's all these people trying to find these like warehouses that once were really good for making rice, and now they're trying to make cannabis, but like a lot of the electrical is not up to code. A lot of the fire's not up to code. The city regulations hasn't like qualified this deemed fitting for manufacturing, you know, good business practices isn't considered under cannabis law. So there's all of these it basically, the compliance is a big block of Swiss cheese. And it's just tons of these little holes that are just really big holes for the overall better development. And until we get those kind of fine lined out, or until we get like more money into the regulatory process, it's going to be really difficult for us to even be on the level of, for the federal government to look at it and be like, this is worthy to be on a legal setup. I mean, you look at it, the federal government wants to be a part of this probably more than not. The only issue is it's really hard to regulate a lot of these processes and procedures. And to do so, it's going to take even more funding and more money for these people. And these people are just going to, again, cut corners. And so you can't pay somebody $15 an hour on a night shift to run a butane extractor and not expect to have some big issues like explosions or like some serious issues later down the road where you're coming up with a product that you can't even look up, because the overall you have to have it from the top and it works its way down. It doesn't go from like the middle and then kind of become better. It has to start from the top, which makes it very difficult because nobody has that extra $1 million to buy the property to build a facility that is up to code. So I want the employees to get paid better. I feel especially these workers that are doing a lot of tedious folding, packaging, processing, dealing with really hot temperatures, really cold temperatures, having to wear full out suits, like these types of things, heating up ethanol to 70 Celsius and then having them put their face over it. That's a dangerous task. And it's a dangerous task that needs to happen in order to get those vape cartridges. So you can't be paying. You need to have the proper pay. You need to have the proper insurance. This is
to
just
attract the best. Yeah, to attract the best people that are conscientious, and also to potentially motivate people to be really discerning and detail oriented when they need to be.
Right. Yeah, it's a very difficult situation because there is no standard really set. And so until a standard set for, extractors get $20 an hour plus full benefits, it'll constantly be a back and forth game until you see those companies that are doing really well. They do pay their employees a lot better, and they treat them a lot better as well too.
If we were to set the precedent, we're reporting from the quarantine camp here. It's May. I'm in Los Angeles. We're still on lockdown, so we're still talking about COVID and how that's affecting the industry. We can talk about that in segment 3 if you like.
Yeah, I know. We can talk all day. I realize that.
So we can talk all day, Shay and I. Should we segue into segment 3?
Sure. Yeah.
No, let's set our intention.
Okay.
What would be the precedent for, and I don't want to put you on the line, so if you don't want to answer this question, don't answer the question. If we were to set a precedent for what we would pay an extraction tech who's working maybe the graveyard shift,
Right.
and they're managing maybe the lower spectrum of responsibilities,
Sure.
what do you think would be a good rate?
I mean, just from what I've seen, honestly, you get what you pay for, and at the night shift, you're going to want somebody that you can feel like you don't need to be up every hour calling them type of thing. I would say 25 to 30 bucks an hour isn't crazy. And I say full benefits, like insurance, and they have to be OSHA certified, because it all has to deal with all of these like processes, pressures, vacuums, heat, cold. And if you're not paying attention to one little thing, that whole thing could go up. And that's an extremely dangerous and very expensive situation.
Absolutely.
So I think a processor you could get away with maybe 20 bucks an hour to 18. I don't think you should go lower than 15. And then a packager, I would even give them 20 bucks an hour just because the work is so tedious. It's not like a glorified position, and you're like trying to make them crank out as many as they possibly can in 1 hour. That's pretty taxing, especially if you're working a night shift. So,
and I want the labels to look good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. Like that's where we're talking about the ethics. Like it has to start from the very top, because if you don't have it from the very top, you can't come in the middle of it and be like, oh yeah, now these prepackaged jars will be totally high class from here. It's like, no, you get the good grower, you get the good flour,
hallelujah. Hallelujah.
It's a full thing. And I'm not saying that, like, honestly, if you want to pay them less, then make things less expensive. California, that's simple. If you want less, you're going to get what you pay for. And I've seen too many accidents, and I've heard too many, tragic stories of people just smoking and then coming in and blasting butane all night in their, like a little hole, and it just explodes. So yeah, I would say that, it's not crazy to think that you should pay them the actual standards you would pay anybody at a manufacturer. It's
right.
a manufacturer.
Oh, absolutely. And bottom line is that your license to manufacture and produce could be jeopardized.
Huge. I mean, if there's any complications, they're doing a 3-strike program right now in the city of Los Angeles, where they come in and they do a fat write-up of everything that they see wrong. You have to fix it. So the next time they come in, that's strike 2. If it's still not fixable, by strike 3, you're penalized, and you're penalized by having to shut down. Not only do you have to pay a fine, but based off the penalty, it could be anywhere from a week to 2 months of just no work, no process, no nothing. And in cannabis, that's a big hiccup. So yeah, after 3 strikes on those strikes, then they just pull your license, and you're not able to qualify for another license again. Like not even a liquor license. If you decided like, cannabis wasn't it, but I want to open a bar, you won't be able to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are heavy ramifications. Thanks for sharing.
California, man, they just went all out. I mean, I think there's only one state that's worse, and I think it's New York. But New York's trying to get better at it, because they've had a lot of people like, filing lawsuits and against the state. And so it's been kind of interesting to kind of watch.
Well, also Washington, because they're not issuing any more licenses right now. I mean, it's been a couple of years, and you're out.
And the thing is too, when they issued the license, I think they only issued like 70 at max. The whole state of Washington, there's only 70 applications or something. That is so small. That is a small amount, which means, I mean, it's good because it means that the people that really want it have to really get it. And the people that don't really want it will just open a bar or something.
Well, they report their earnings publicly, and so you can go to the website and see. But I think that they're still, like, just from my insider information, some of the top companies I think are still struggling. I mean, I think it depends on what you're doing, but
yeah,
our brands, maybe not the retailers. they're popping.
Yeah, well, the retailers got it nice because they don't even have to do a distribution cut. Like they pay the excise, and after that they're done with it. They get to wash their hands of it. So